We'll now move on to our panel discussion, and I'd like to invite our panelists up onto the stage. And as I call them up, I will also be introducing them to you. If I could request Mr. Suresh Ramasubramanian, the Director of HR at Max India, to please join me on stage. Suresh has over 2 decades of HR leadership experience across various sectors, covering manufacturing, information technology, hospitality, and banking. His key areas of expertise are in helping businesses scale up through active interventions in organization design, talent management, staffing, and rewards management. Lieutenant General Dr. S.B. Kochhar, CEO, Telecom Sector Skill Council. With an intensive experience of 39 years, Dr. Kochhar has technical acumen and management expertise to bring forth excellence in the telecom and IT sector of the country. He's the CEO of Telecom Sector Skill Council and has successfully induced quality skilling and increased enrollment in a brief tenure. He served with the Indian Army in the Signals Division in notable positions and has successfully introduced greenfield concepts there. He pioneered the use of IT at the Western Borders and the Indian Armed Forces Institution, even introducing convergence in the Army, and which played a key role in making the Army War College as the most IT networked college in the world. Mr. Faisal Syed, Director HR Expedia India. He brings with him over 18 years of extensive experience in human resources in varied business environments and diverse internal and external client groups. He has worked in financial services, insurance, IT, and e-commerce industries. At Expedia India, he supports the implementation of practices and cultures that drive innovation and employee engagement. A key aspect of his role involves working closely with APAC and global HR leaders on strategic HR interventions. Mr. Anmol Nautiyal, who's joined as Director IBM's Social Business and Smarter Workforce Business in India and South Asia in January 2013. He's also responsible for India operations at Kenexa, an IBM company. In these roles, he enables businesses to attract, recruit, and retain the best people, develop their skills, cultivate new leaders, and capitalize on their collective intelligence by applying human insight, social technologies, and workforce analytics to transform the way they work. In the past, he has held various leadership roles across business areas of software product development, professional services, strategy, and marketing in India, UK, and the US mostly. Our moderator this evening is Payal Bhattar, senior business journalist with nearly 14 years of experience in key editorial positions in some of India's leading media conglomerates. She was senior associate editor in charge of news features and current affairs programming at ET Now and associate editor news features and chief correspondent capital markets for 7 years at CNBC TV 18. She has also worked with Business Standard as a banking reporter. Payal specializes in broadcast media, and apart from reporting and anchoring, she has produced and directed several long-format research-oriented programs. So Payal, it's over to you now.
Thank you so much. Hello and welcome everybody. By 2025, the millennial generation will comprise 75% of the global workforce. This generation wants more from the government, from businesses, and they want more from their workplace. So how do you attract, develop, and retain the millennials? Well, our panelists here will tell us more about that. Faisal, let me start with you. What do you think millennials actually want from prospective employers?
Okay, thank you, panel, Payal, and thank you, HT Media, for giving us this opportunity. I think there are a couple of things that we just need to take a step back and look at. It's a fairly give and take relationship. It has been there since, at least in the Indian context, for the last couple of decades. 2-3 things which come out when you talk to people who are millennials is that typically they are the people who have been born after 1982 or 1980. So fundamentally they look for one significant amount of freedom in architecting their own roles and what is it that they want to do in that. So if there is a job description, often is the start point. Second, they are very comfortable working in ambiguous environments. And therefore, hierarchy is important, but only for approvals. They are fairly happy to take on activities and move on from there. And third, I think, is a significant amount of opportunity that they wish to do or ask organizations to do stuff which is challenging the organizational milieu. So, for instance, whether it is giving time and effort to seed their own thoughts into intrapreneurial activities, or it is about looking at established modes of conducting business and saying that, can we do it differently? So, to start off, I'd like to just summarize with these 3 points.
Okay, Suresh, what do you think?
Yeah, pretty much what he says makes sense, but there is a different view I hear from other colleagues in HR. Okay, that folks in their 20s and 30s, that the work ethic is not as strong as those who came from the earlier generations. Okay, I don't entirely agree with that, but I think there are some sectors where this is an issue. To me, this goes back to what happened back in school or at home. Because this is a generation that grew up with abundance, not with constraints like, let's say, my generation grew up with. So you pretty much had many things planned on a platter. So there is this inherently high level of confidence in oneself, the ability to articulate and express. And if I go back to what Faisal said on work, what I find is, agree with me what's expected, don't tell me how to do it. Don't micromanage me, it doesn't work. Okay? So in one sense, command and control that we grew up with just does not work with folks in this age group. And this will increasingly become even more difficult. And then I don't think any of us have a pat, simple solution yet for that.
Okay, General Kochhar, what do you think? What can companies do to attract?
I'd like to say something on that.
All right, please do.
No, I have a little different point of view, maybe because I don't come from the field from which you all come, and I come from a soldiering background. I have an issue with the very topic that has been flashed. I don't think humans are resources. I think I agree with the gist of what Shiv was saying, that they're capital. There's a difference between word with a resource and a capital. Human resource is different from human capital. We invest in capital, and we make the capital grow. If you look at resource, then it is you use the resource for whatever purpose that you have taken it, and then forget about it. Words don't make a difference, but in this case they do. Having said that, what my colleagues are saying are certainly the symptoms. These are the symptoms that we see in the generation today. But I would rather look at the cause. And I again draw on the words that Shiv was saying, that 500 years ago, the requirements are the same. That's what you said, Shiv. And 500 later also, the requirements are going to be the same. It is the environment which has changed. And it is the environment which is causing people to change. People are adapting. If you look back into your own childhood, weren't your parents saying the same thing about you? Or weren't their parents saying the same thing about them? So we are changing with the environment. If job security was very important during my childhood and is not so important now, is because people know that they'll get a job. People know that they will not starve. That was not the case earlier. There was a lack of knowledge earlier. Now there is abundance of knowledge. People are qualified. Why do they think they can do things independently? Is one of the many things is that because they know what is to be done. They have knowledge. They are not worried about their future. So they can work independently. They don't bother too much about hierarchy. They can produce something in a shorter time frame than what they would have done otherwise in earlier times. So that is adding up to the natural psyche of a human being, that I want to be independent, I want to do my own thing. Globalization is another thing. Every human being has an inherent desire to compete and be recognized. Now that recognition can come in many forms. And that is what the youngsters of today are looking for. That is what we've all been looking for in the beginning. You look at defense forces. We are given a medal by the President of India, and we pin it on our chest. We are very proud about it. To a person who's uninitiated, he says, what are they proud about, a small ribbon? But for us, that is life. Why? Because we get recognized. So that is what the youngster today is looking for. He's looking for recognition in his peer group. He's looking for recognition in his company. He's looking for recognition in the environment. And that is, I feel, the cause. These are the causes which are causing what are being referred to, what I refer to as symptoms, which we are seeing today. And these will keep evolving. It is not that today we are looking at this generation and 10 years later it will remain the same. It will not. As things change in the environment, things will change with the populace too. I think that is how I look at it.
So what can companies do then to, attract the workforce? Anmol, can you
Sure.
please?
So before we go, I just wanted to take a quick check. How many in the audience are really millennials, people those who were born after 1980? Oh, so we have small population here.
Very few.
So that's good. That good representation. And I just wanted to give a view in terms of as we heard, there is a lot of change which is happening around us, and then millennials, those have been brought up differently, those grew differently. So what is changing for work environment? So if you really look, the fundamental shift which is happening is the definition of work has changed. So if you really look at last many decades, how work, the definition of work and how work was being perceived by employees and employers has changed significantly. Couple of generations before, work was the meaning for providing sustenance. If you look at the generation before and what we see today, that many ways by which individuals, employees started looking at satisfaction along with the sustenance. And the generation today and what we see in future, the definition which is adding into the work definition is beyond sustenance, beyond satisfaction, there is a level of identity which employees have started attaching to. And this one small dimension of identity has created a significant level of complexity for organizations to really make themselves far more attractive organizations for this new generation, and also has created a significant level of complexity to really create an engaging environment for employees or for this new generation which is going to come. So this definition of work, of how to create an environment which will provide identity, which will provide a new form of engagement for this new generation, has created a significant level of challenge. So how organization and what organizations need to do, and what employees or new workforce which is coming into the organization need to start looking at workplaces. So if you really look at what organizations need to do, so clearly they need to make themselves far more attractive place for new generation to come in, and then create methods and ways by which they can keep these employees, keep this new generation engaged, developed, and really retained into the organization. Whereas when we start looking at what employees are looking for, so new workforce generation, this generation of new workforce is really looking for a few very different things which we have not seen in past. The generation which was before that were, let's say, call them cowboys, call them lone warriors, but really the motivation for them to work, the style of work was very different, and the way the organization was structured to provide satisfaction, structured to provide sustenance for them were methods differently. When we look at the new generation, the top level of drivers for new millennials is coming out is they look for more collaborative methods by which they can get engaged. Their level of motivations are very different, from job security to probably more meaning into work. And then their method of working is very different, and which is far more around deriving more support system, creating more methods by which they can create meaning to their work. And if you really look at these two dimensions, the discussion today becomes far more interesting to really hear from many of our panelists how employers and employees will start creating environment between them, which will create far more business sense, which will create more personal meaning for employees and organizations to really drive the business value.
Faisal, then can you give us some examples of how perhaps a company can woo prospective employees better, say in the years to come?
Okay. Before I do that, I'd just like to take the liberty of acknowledging that one of the challenges of being the first speaker is that you actually hear all the right stuff later on and you say, oh my God, why didn't I say all the good things that happened? So in no particular order, there are a couple of things that I'm very tempted to respond to, and I'll take your indulgence in this, and I'll make it quick. So just to set a context, and one of the things that we do in HR, and I'm commenting more on myself and less on Suresh here, is that we like to give a lot of gyan and context without putting it in data and facts, and that's where Anmol and people like him would come in. So this is Google for you. I could be slightly off the mark, but today Google is a verb and not a proper noun. So just to put this conversation in some context, the term Generation X was coined in the 1950s by a photographer called Robert Capa. So it's not a new term at all, right? And the reason they called it X was that they wanted to talk about people coming out of the Second World War, and they didn't have a term around that. The first reference of millennials as a generation happens around 1987, when two guys wrote a book and they compared how Western society has changed over 20 generations, from 1584 to the 21st century. So why I'm giving this context is to say that perhaps our debate is about 30 years too late, right? Millennials are here. Sociologists put them in the time frame of 1980s to about 2000, early 2000. And this is important to answer your question, Payal, that we often tend to believe that millennials are only the first 5 years of the second decade of somebody's life, those extremely glamorous, sexy place of being 18 to 25. Well, actually it isn't. The world is graying. Short of countries like India and few others, the entire West and Japan and Russia is graying. So a lot of where our research and our thoughts come from is old. So in that context, what are some of the things that millennials need? And I'll give you an example which happened with me and it left me quite dumbfounded. All of you would have heard of, Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, and none of you probably would have heard of a guy called Saurabh. And I bumped into Saurabh on around 11th or 12th August in Delhi Technological University, which is erstwhile Delhi College of Engineering. And my company had gone there for campus hiring. So he's part of the placement team. We hire only engineers, computer science, whiz kids, product development, all that jazz. And he was pretty bright around it. But he didn't sit for Expedia's campus hiring. And when the day got over and you're pretty pally by the end of the day, so I just casually asked, so Saurabh, why did you sit for our campus? You are engineer, computer science, you fill all the checks. So he said, I already have an offer from Microsoft. I said, oh, okay, you're joining Microsoft. He said, no. I said, what are you going to do? So he said, I have a startup. If I get funding, I will run my own startup. And probably he was 20, 21 years of age, right? I and my fellow panelists there, we were completely amazed with the guy's confidence, amazing level of confidence. And somebody said, and I'm quoting one of my colleagues, that we have all heard of these guys who did .coms and all that, but we'll hear of Saurabh soon enough. So to give you that as a reference point, I think there are 2-3 things that one needs to be cognizant of today's generation, which is there in the workflow. First is to acknowledge that they are huge risk takers. Many organizations, and I don't want to belabor just the IT industry around it, give weightage for people who are able to push the envelope. Second, they genuinely look for something, Anmol, that you mentioned, Our generation, if I can be unfair enough to say I'm old, but definitely there is a generation which has worked, which has looked for meaning of their life in work. Millennials look for meaning in life. Work is a means towards that, right? So my trip in life is not to make Facebook and have billions of dollars. WhatsApp was bought by Facebook for $19 billion, has 52 people. And their trip in life definitely is not to make money. So I think second is that apart from being risk takers, they look for meaning in life, and they will do activities which give them a huge, access to having that meaning created. And third, I think, is they look for organizations or an environment which is supportive. And that just does not relate to organizations. They look at organizations and relationships, right? So that service till death syndrome died long time back, but they're very happy to work with an organization and say, I'm comfortable working with you part-time, full-time, off and on, and so on and so forth, because for me, it is about relationship. It can be an organization, it can be an individual. And these three things clearly differentiate them from people like me who are unfortunately sometimes taking hiring decisions, because we are extremely blinkered in our approach to how we hire and calibrate those people.
Okay. Suresh, in this context, I want to ask you.
There's so many things I want to My mind's jumping with thoughts. Anyway.
All right. Can you give us some examples of what companies can do to seem attractive to this kind of a workforce, the kind of workforce that Faisal has just described?
So, can I lay out context
Sure.
shortly? So, go back to all that many of us have talked about. So, fundamentally risk-taking, confident, expressive, articulate, know what they want. And if I rephrase something you said, it's all a continuum, right? Meaning in life, work is one component of that. Work is not just what it is. And Payal, I'll go back to some stuff you asked us before we came in here. Comes down to, do we seem like, and this is perception, do we seem like a place that's cool, easy, not restrictive, okay? The work environment needs to display that. The work in itself has to just be a means of expressing myself, okay? Go back to something that I quoted Peter Drucker in 1959. These are people who are using their brains, not their hands, okay? So the work is an expression of myself. It's all pretty much one and the same. It's not just putting money in the bank and food on the table. The jobs in the company have to be utilization of my skills, not necessarily my education. I'll take a punt today. I dare say that for most folks who are entering the workforce now or entered in the last 10 years, it's not a 1:1 equation that what I studied is what I work on. I could have done a PhD in chemistry and I could be selling computers, tablets, whatever. That's key. The other is, as a young person in the workforce, I want people that I can look up to and learn from, but go back to command and control, don't talk down to me, okay? You can speak with me, don't talk down to me. So some of these small things, if they can be worked out, and I'll come down finally to, in the perception of the labor force, if as a company I seem like a place that's easy and cool, the work will be interesting, and there isn't a talk down, there isn't a command and control. So and I'll go back to what I first said is, you'll agree with me on what's to be done, you will not micromanage me. That will pretty much work. Okay. Now, if you'll allow me, there are two other things I want to get to. General Kocher, completely with you on resource. Because the resource, you know, by definition, is limited, will be used, and will be consumed. But I think that's a hard, bitter truth that all of us human beings are looked at as resources by our employers. I don't think we can change that yet. The other point that jumped in my head and which I have been thinking about is there is really no millennial generation or X or Y. The same thing was said about us when we entered the workforce. Same thing was said about the previous generation. So it's, and to something I think you alluded to, is there are multiple generations at play here. And that's the difference to manage and talk to. And the last point is that this generation that's come onto the workforce in India are individual workers. So our precepts about teaming and teamwork is all blah blah. Let's face it and accept it. Through our education system, we've trained people to work as individuals. Our reward systems are now individual. And given the level of confidence and awareness and access to knowledge, these are individual workers. If we can engage with them as individuals and not as cohorts, I think we'll get to it, which is tricky, which come down to folks like HR managers like Faisal and I, is structuring our policies and people management where there will be flexibility for individuals and not strict rules.
Yeah, but yes, please do.
You know, what should a company do is the question. What should a company do is what the prospective employee wants, and where there can be congruence between the company's aims and the employee's aims. That, I think it's as simple as that. What is it the employee's aim, if we ask? The generation which is coming up is quite different from earlier, that everybody has said is taken for granted. I'll give you a live example. And the gentleman is sitting here, and if I'm wrong, he can get up. So I won't take his name, he understands what I'm talking about. This gentleman was working with Ericsson after doing his BTech, and worked there for 3 years, doing pretty well, and slated for out-of-turn promotion. He chose to leave Ericsson, not for a lucrative MBA, which would have been the case in our generation or in the generations which came later, but to do a fellowship as a Young India Fellow, which is a new program, which is still running, and it's a prestigious program, but it has nothing to do with placements post the program. It makes you a full-fledged, broad-spectrum individual, but it does not give you any job guarantee, or does not even talk of jobs at the end of the program. He did that. Why? Because it was a calling. He saw himself as an element of change, and he went there. He did well there, and thereafter he was choosy in taking up a job. Could that confidence have been there earlier? The youngster of today is confident. He's confident of his abilities. He wants to bring in change, and he wants to be recognized for that, not necessarily in money. He wants to earn just about that much with which he can be comfortable, with which he can make his family comfortable. Gone are the days when he would like to save. Gone are the days when he would like to invest for his children's future. He doesn't do that. We used to do that. We're still doing it. So that psyche has changed. There's some other things. He wants the organization to be flexible and knowledgeable. He doesn't want to get into an organization which is, straight-jacketed, that you will work like this, you can't go left, you can't go right. And he wants his peers and seniors to be knowledgeable. He's not going to work under a person who doesn't have knowledge and who yet is his boss. He wants the environment, to my mind, to be horizontal. And he wants to be seen as an element of growth, and he does not necessarily want to be part of the system. What I mean by that is, I'll give you with another example. In the organization where I work, that is the Telecom Sector Skill Council, we are trying to build digital content and LMS, and be the forerunners of online skilling. And for that purpose, we try to locate some good youngsters who could do this for us. part of it, the LMS part. So 2 youngsters came to us, who incidentally again are from the same campus. And they showed us a platform they were building, and they said, this is a good platform, and to my surprise, they called me uncle rather than calling me by name or by calling me sir. And they said, uncle, this is a good platform. If you want it, we can use it in TSSC. I went through the entire thing, had my team look at it, and it was really good. So I said, okay, since you are without a job, we'll take you on, and we'll pay you the highest salary possible that we can pay in a company. And they were sheepishly looking down. They said, no, uncle, we don't want to be part of an organization. We want to work on our own. This was 6 months back. I said, then how are you going to work with us? They said, we'll collaborate with you. We'll do revenue share with you. Coming from youngsters who were just about 25, this was very surprising, very surprising. They didn't know where their money is going to come from next month, but they were willing to take that risk. They had that much of confidence in their capabilities, and they proved it. They came back to me after 3 months with the same platform. We got into an agreement on revenue sharing. I said, now you expand into content development. You know what they told me? Yes, when we started, we had a collaborator who put in 15 lakhs, and both of us put in 5 lakhs each. That made it 25 lakhs. Okay, and we gave 10% to that collaborator, equity holding. Now we want to sell off another 10%. I said, fine, maybe my organization can pitch in. And I asked them, what will be the price? And can you guess, in 5 months, their aspirations had gone up to about 3.5 crores. And they got an offer. That is the type of people that we have to deal with. Not only are they capable, they have aspirations. And they want to grow. They are willing to contribute to the growth of the company they work with. But they don't want to be part of the company. They want to be collaborators. And that is the way to go forward. Now, there was a mention made by my colleague about generation gap. I'm sure Payal is going to come to that later, but let me mention, what is generation gap? Is it the physical age?
No, it's in the mind.
It's the mind. And why has the mind changed? Because we got conditioned by the environment in which we've been working. So if we kept ourselves alive to the changing environment, I don't think there's any generation gap. Okay, again I go back to my own organization, the Army. We have people joining at 16 years of age, and we have commanders at 60 years of age. And yet we don't find any generation gap. Because we invest in those people, and as they grow, they keep changing. We tell them the path, and we tell them how they can move horizontally and how they can move vertically, and we ensure that the mind keeps changing. I won't say that for 100% people, then it is individual. But as a system, as an organization, that is done. And increasingly, that is being translated into corporate. And pardon my saying so, I don't quite see you are calling it a resource, human resource, which is used and thrown. Corporates are increasingly investing. Your company is also investing. Why are they investing? They are investing for the growth of that individual, and in turn, if that individual grows, the corporate grows. In the team also, a good leader is that who promotes a team member. He doesn't promote himself. There are 2 types of leaders. One is he says, सारे लोग मेरे साथ थके हुए हैं, मैं ही अकेला काम करता हूँ. He achieves results. There's another chap who says, my team has worked, they have produced what they have worked. Now tell me, when the leader says the latter part, hasn't he also grown in stature? Whatever that has been achieved, whether he says I have done it or he says the team has done it, he grows along with the growth. I see this increasingly happening. It may not be called teamwork. It may be a collection of individuals put together and they grow. But I somehow feel that the teamwork in youngsters is growing. It is not being curtailed. I don't see the earlier environment where there was so much of competition that knowledge was power and people were not sharing knowledge at all. Now I see youngsters sharing knowledge very openly and collaborating to come to a solution. Then there is self-esteem. A person looks at himself at a particular level, and he wants to reach that. And he wants to be comfortable. Because of the media, he knows what are the comforts which are available. And that is one of the reasons why today, even in areas like mine, we find it difficult to recruit people for the blue-collar jobs. Very difficult to recruit people for the blue-collar jobs. White-collar jobs, no dearth. Blue-collar jobs, not available. You must have read a recent article in the newspaper which said the maids in Gurgaon are earning up to 35,000 rupees a month. It's a fact. I stay in Gurgaon. We end up paying 17,000 rupees a month for the household work. In my organization, I can hire a fresh engineer for 10,000, a fresh MBA for 15,000. So that difference is coming in. And more people are migrating to comfortable jobs, comfortable environments, and yet they want recognition. So that is what the companies have to create to attract them. They have to look after their professional life, they have to look after their personal life.
So, there are certain sectors which seem
I just want to
attractive.
add a little bit.
Yes,
Can I just quickly? So, sir, just this, I have this one nuance Rudy said is, I think those, I'll say new to workforce, last 10, 15 years is pretty much work together, but need to be recognized and rewarded individually. There is that to my mind is clear. And you're right, yes, companies do invest, and it's all for a business upside at the end of the day. To the army example that you gave, that's key even while hiring, is whether the person's 20 years, 40 years, 50 years, is there fundamentally a curiosity to learn? And that curiosity to learn is what keeps the earlier generations of people more experienced in step with those who are relatively newer to the workforce. And hence, I was thinking of this topic. Somewhere is like an us and them. You know what? The problem is not with the millennials or whichever generation. The problem is with the chaps sitting in middle and top management who need to adapt, to understand, adapt and change themselves. This is like in my kids' school, they run this whatever parent interaction once every 6 months. They're pretty much teaching the parents how to change than change the kids. So that curiosity and that desire to want to learn is key.
That is true. Anyone here who is not from HR? Just raise your hands. Okay. How do you view HR?
Oh,
No.
don't talk about them.
No. The reason is, why I'm asking this is, there has to be a change in the attitude of HR. HR is not to manage the manpower. HR has to now get into guiding them, looking after their professional interests, looking after their personal interests, and changing according to what are the requirements of the day. It is changing. I'm not saying it is not changing. But they are bogged down with so much of rules and regulations that most of the people who are not from the HR field look at HR as a good department, but they don't see them visibly on a day-to-day life. They see them only when the paycheck gets curtailed or some such thing, but they don't see them as enabling. That is where the change has to come in. I'm not trying to decry HR. While she introduced me as a technical man, yes, but I was also heading the HR department of Army, and I've seen it happening there also. So the HR makes a lot of difference to the life of people, a lot of difference. And if they're alive to the requirements of the people that they manage, it'll make a world of a change.
So
Okay.
you know what?
I want to bring
suggest to HT is to maybe sometime have a session on, do you really need an HR department?
Okay, I want to bring the topic back to the
Yeah.
millennials, and I want to ask you, there are certain sectors which seem very attractive to the millennial workforce, for instance, IT or perhaps even the services sector. How can companies in the core sector or in the manufacturing sector actually be attractive to the millennial workforce? Because that's a real challenge for HR managers.
Sure. And as we heard, the the true way by which companies need to attract the new workforce, and it is all centric around how this new workforce is far more looking for meaning, purpose, impact. And if meaning, purpose, impact is what they're looking for, how employers and organizations need to create their story in the sense that it really helps them relate to creating meaning, purpose, or impact for whatever they're doing. So to give you an example, a decade before when I used to interview, at the end of the interview you ask the candidate, do you have any questions? And candidate will invariably ask, okay, do you have a project in new technology? Will you send me on site? Those kind of questions. Today, when you ask a candidate for an interview, the candidate will ask you, okay, do you have a CSR department? Do you do anything beyond business? Are there opportunities to do volunteering? And things like that, which is the new workforce is really looking for a broader engagement, not just from the business, which they need to generate their skill and career, but beyond it, which is each organization needs to start looking at how they are really communicating that view. So give you a story with our organization in IBM, when we used to create our advertisements, which used to go out to share our story with our clients, with the world. Till last year, we used to generate a singular ad which will get released at Masters game or the time of the Super Bowl. And then we started getting a feedback that this is not just creating the meaning for the new generation. And then we re-looked at the whole approach by which the messages and by which the story was coming out, and we realized by taking feedback is that we need to create far more meaningful stories of how technology is really creating meaning in life, changing the world. And then we created about 50 stories in 17 countries to create that sharing that kind of story around what kind of impact, what kind of meaning is being built. And I think that started resonating significantly differently from what we have seen at the level which was happening a year before. So meaning, purpose, and impact clearly becomes a very top agenda. But then the organizations also need to start thinking about how they go beyond the purpose and meaning and start creating an environment which really provide collaborative methods of working for the new age workforce. How the organization inside the company is really fostering the new methods of collaboration, engagement, and ways of working. And as the question which Payal was asking of how the core sectors, those organizations, those need to look at how they can really create broader platform of individuals to bring more collaboration by working inside the role, by creating far more methods of bringing more collaborative pieces by which new age employees will be able to come together and really create a platform to really build upon it.
Okay. Do you think it helps if a company takes the entrepreneurial route? For instance, they try to have several entrepreneurs within the organization. Do you think that route really helps with this generation?
So I just wanted to give you an example, a small story. Last time I spoke about Saurabh, and it just struck me while you were raising this point, and I want to take forward from what Anmol said about meaning and purpose. I think it helped me also think through a couple of thoughts. So my company provides free cab service because they have an office in Gurgaon and you can never reach Gurgaon on time. So I take a cab to office in the morning. Couple of times it happened that as we started approaching our office, my cab driver, he would lean forward, take out a tablet and put it on the screen, the dashboard of his cab. And by that time the office would come, I would get off and thank him. His name is Narayan. So I'd say, thank you Narayan, get off. Over in the evening. Next morning again, when we were approaching the office, he would lean forward, take out a tablet, put it on the dashboard and move on. When it happened 3-4 times, I realized that, this is too much. I need to ask him. So I said, Narayan, आप ये क्या करते हैं? So he said, sir, when he drops me off in the morning and when he picks me up, he works for a cab service provider, but he's completely free during that time. So they have a parking place somewhere, God-forsaken place in Gurgaon, where they park and they while away the time. So he says, sir, I have got enrolled with Meru Cabs. I was on training and I invested in buying a tablet which Meru provides to its drivers. This is my iCard, and there's a very smart Narayan in a grey suit with a white hat. And when I switch this tablet on, I'm synced to Meru's GPS, and then I get cab drops, and I'm able to time myself in a situation where I can choose what to pick, what fare to take on, and how. So I'm free by the time 4, and then 5:30 I pick you up. I was aghast with his IT savviness. So one of the things that I realized when I was preparing for this session was that it's very nice and oh so cool to talk about millennials in a 5-star environment. He is a millennial himself. And therefore one of the meaning and purposes that we talk about is that millennials today are across social milieu and not just social media. It's not just MBAs and engineers who are millennials. It's Narayans of the world who are millennials as well, and extremely entrepreneurial. And I think second pile is probably not so much as a sense of giving people an opportunity to actually start off, because not everybody is really cut out to start a company. Not every idea makes sense, and for all the great ideas that we see successful and get venture funding, there are probably tens or even hundreds or dozens at least, which really never see the light of the sun. So I think what people really look for is, does the organization provide me an enabling environment where I can risk and fail and risk and fail? Not risk and fail the same thing, but different things, right? So if this is what the organizations provide, then people say, I am enabled. And that's where they find meaning and purpose in their life. And ultimately, they are able to create an impact. So millennials typically would look to create an impact. We would look to serve. And that's a fundamental difference.
Okay, from how you attract millennials to how you develop them, because this generation has massive training needs. They want to see where their careers are progressing, and they want to know it quick. How can companies, help develop this kind of a workforce?
So let me take something that we're doing in one of our companies. Okay, this is a directional shift. So the two things that we're clear in terms of skill or training or development is that it has to have a ready impact for the individual. So bulk of the training available is more functional. Okay, but the others, what's the directional change is, we're all used in Indian companies to promotion policies and years and ratings and all of that. This is a tough one to bite, is to slowly try to move the organization away from promotions to it's a pretty much open set of jobs that are there. There are companies in the world that have done it. It's nothing new. And say that you pitch for the job and you get it. So in a way, it's like a menu that you can pick what you want. It's also contrary to what is still current popular management or HR theory. You have to do career planning, charting, etc. There's pretty much none of that. So you pick your path and you take your path. There's a menu of training also that's available, which is more work related. What's not solved or cracked yet is the really preparing the first level of supervisors, the new managers, because now the age difference between a manager and his team is not more than 2-3 years. Okay, well, similar background, similar qualification. That's not entirely cracked as yet. That goes to another topic altogether, because the number of people that you can learn from who are more experienced, those are disappearing. Those numbers aren't too high.
Right.
The 40s and 50s aren't too high in the corporate workforce at least. So that's not solved as yet, but needs to be solved. So this is an example of what we're doing. Yeah.
Okay, apart from training, they also want to know how they are being judged. How
Assessed.
they are being judged and assessed at work. So what can companies do to, to perhaps have more clarity in how you're going to assess and judge this workforce? What kind of a role does analytics play in this?
Frankly, Payal, I think that's a slightly unfair question because this applies to everybody. Even I would like to, while I'm not a millennial, would love to have clarity in life. No, unfortunately, one of the characteristics that we hire for is ability to handle ambiguity. So the moment I say clarity, my manager says, this is all that I have. My long-term planning is 3 months. So my friend, if you're seeking clarity, you're in the wrong space. But despite being slightly flippant here, I think what people look for is a consistency and transparency in evaluating effort and impact with rewards and recognitions, which probably applies right from CEOs downwards. So having said that, couple of experiences that I have had, as an organization, Expedia experimented with 5-point rating scale and bell curves and all that. And a couple of years back, we decided to move away from that. And we said, this doesn't work. It's typecasting people, it's like reservations and doesn't work. And there was a huge hangama in the global HR fraternity to say, what are you guys going to do? Well, guess what? The company still works. We don't have a 5-point rating to office, provided the work gets done. So today I was not in office. I was working from home, so to say. But the work got done and I was available. And therefore, if this consistently applies to people, they're very happy to be rewarded what they are. And lastly, I think what organizations today do is they have probably started moving, and I'm saying probably, not all of them, from grade-based incentives and grade-based policies to generic policies. So for instance, only VPs and above get cabins. Doesn't work. Everybody sits in open space, versus parking slots reserved for HODs versus first come, first serve, right? And everybody travels economy and nobody travels business class because it just makes no sense paying 4 times for the same flight, right? So if you have that consistency, people value you.
Right.
Payal, to your point on the work from home, Faisal, it's one thing to have the policy. The other is fundamentally what's the culture that operates, okay? Is there that check, that phone call, or that snide comment that's going around the floor? Then the culture is not there to support it. So if we fix the culture, then that policy will work. I mean, it's pretty much what anyone would have seen.
General, I want to bring you back to one of the points, one of the examples that you gave us. Compensation alone is not enough. What can companies do, to ensure that they perhaps develop and attract this generation?
Okay. You see, my company's average age, including me, is 25. So today, before I came for this session, I sat down with about 12 people and I asked them, I asked them the same question Payal is asking me. And some things came out which were very revealing. They are not looking for compensation. It should be adequate, not only to meet their personal physical needs, but also to give them a social standing. It is very important that they require a social standing. What is important to them is that they should be treated like humans. Treat humans like humans. If you do that, half your battle is won. What are their needs? If he or she is absent, was there a requirement? Could she inform or could he inform me? Or is it that this person is getting into a habit? That distinction between a ghoda and a gada has to be there. They value that. Okay? They value discipline. Whatever you may say, they want a flat hierarchy. They want access to the top management. And like you said, the top management obviously should not expect them to talk down on them. They should talk to them. But the access should be there. It should not be a hierarchical access. This is what is a requirement, and companies are increasingly enforcing. And please understand, why is this requirement? This requirement is coming because of technology that is available. Earlier, this requirement was not there. Today, it is there because technology is permitting it, and hence this has got ingrained in the minds of people that it can be done and efficiencies can be built in. Again, I tend to go back to my army days. The hierarchy is 3 down. Why is it 3 down? You know, if there is a corps, then there will be three divisions, and under each division will be 3 brigades, under each brigade will be 3 battalions. Why? Because technology of that time permitted us to exercise control only on that much manpower, that much spread of manpower. So similarly in companies, hierarchy is not dying, and the youngsters today do not want hierarchy. They want a flat organization. What they detest is imposing foreign standards in Indian conditions. The workforce is Indian, but the standards that we are enforcing on them are imported from abroad, because management gurus have taught us that, because the practices in corporations are that doesn't work in India. That is not liked. A company which pays less but looks after its employees, gives an impression to the employee that we care for you, not only professionally, we also care for you personally, for your family needs. That is a company where they would like to stick on to. A company where the sword is always hanging on their head that tomorrow I might get a pink slip is not a company they would like to associate with. Loyalties, yes, loyalties are reducing, I agree with you, but innate loyalty is still there. That pride of belonging to a company is still there. They would like to belong to a company which has a good reputation, which has good standing in the market, but how does that standing come? It's not only from figures, it's not only from sales, not only from profits. The reputation is built up that this company cares for its employees. I wouldn't like to name, there are only a handful of such companies in the Indian context which can qualify for that. Okay. Increasingly, they are also falling into the rat race of foreign culture. I went to a big MNC for a visit. Very efficient, pay very heavily. So I saw the attendance system, fully automated. And when I was coming out, I told my HR head, let's use this in our office. You know, the HR person who was accompanying us said, even if you are late by half a minute, half a day's salary gets deducted. So attendance is top class. When I was going out, one of the HR managers came to my side and whispered in my ear. She said, never do this in your office. We are suffering from this. Okay, we are not being treated like, and this is, mark my words of what I'm going to say, we are not being treated like humans, we are being treated like robots. Now, nobody wants to be treated like a robot. Everybody wants individuality. They want to know very clearly what is their vertical movement, what is their horizontal movement. And after having known that, they would expect the company to honor what has been told to them. We tell a lot of things when people are joining. Many of us don't implement it. That is the most disheartening factor for an employee. We tell them you are on probation for 6 months, we extend the probation. We tell them after probation you will get so much of salary. We say, no, the circumstances have changed, no, you are going to get this much. So that brings down his self-esteem immediately. He's not willing to stay, but he is forced to stay. And the last thing which came out very clearly is the ease of working. Earlier, if a person wanted to change a job or he wanted to do an MBA, he used to do it surreptitiously. That his manager should not know that this is what he's trying to do, because that won't be taken kindly. Today, employees expect that such a thing will happen. As it is, nobody is going to stick around after 3 years. So if they're going to do this surreptitiously, let them do it openly. So that openness and free and frank exchange of ideas takes place. If you try to suppress in one direction, that suppression will apply across the board. You can't say, I'm going to suppress here, and here I'm going to open up. It can't happen like that. It has to be across the board. Yes, there can be a gradient, but it can't be that here it is 100%, here it is 0%. That is not possible. These are some of the ideas I have.
Okay. Anmol, mobility is very important.
Mobility is very important.
For,
Very important.
for
growth.
this generation.
Yes.
And, you know.
Now, while mobility can be within the organization, it can be
Yeah,
without
it can,
the organization.
but they do want more exposure. They want, this generation wants to go out and get more global experience. How can companies encourage this, and how much of a motivation is just, you know,
You see, after
moving to
a
another
particular
office?
time, a person would like to change. He would like his self-esteem to go up. He would like his social pecking order to go up. And he is now in a position to take risks. So at that point of time, many people try to get into the entrepreneur route, which you said. Now, entrepreneur route is not something which is easy to go into, and financing is one of the major problems. Financing and marketing.
You know, from IBM's perspective, I would like to understand that does, you know, placing employees in your global offices actually help in motivating them to continue working
So
for you?
let me take a dimension in terms of when we heard so many aspects of it. This new organization, which has a job to really attract this new generation workforce, and there are so many dimensions which we saw in the discussion today. It needs to be transparent. It needs to create more engaging environment. It needs to be far more collaborative. It needs to create far more mobility in terms of creating diverse experience and growth and transparency across the organization. And what we have been seeing is more and more organizations are really changing the DNA, and their DNA is being centric around how can they create a collaborative sense of DNA inside an organization. And this collaborative DNA is not just in the form of cultural and policies, but also in the form of how technology and the heart of the way organization works is truly in the form of collaborative. And when organization becomes collaborative, it starts becoming more transparent, it starts becoming more engaging, it starts becoming more democratic, and this new generation is all about the collaborative intelligence, wisdom of crowds, and less of command and control. So let me give you a few examples in terms of how we are seeing some of the organizations really creating and changing to the aspect of this collaborative and a centric DNA around this modern enterprise. So let me talk to you about a bank, and let's look at this bank, which was really looking for creating going through a business challenge, and the CEO of the bank had to take a call that they have to open their branches on Sundays. And if we really think of how this policy decision in a bank needs to be applied in the olden world, or the world which we have seen before, which is a policy document is made and is really transmitted across all the organization, and from next week onwards, we will be open on Sundays and you need to report on it. Now, if you really want the same environment or same scenario to be applied into our millennium concept, clearly it will not be treated as a very receptive exercise. So the challenge in front of the organization was, how do you take a policy decision or a business issue, and how do you engage your employees to really create a solution around it? And what CEO does is he really creates a social ideation inside the organization and shares with all the employees that this is how we are facing a business problem. There are solutions which he is looking for, and he's looking for ideas from employees. And you can imagine the new generation will be far more engaging to really give ideas. If we need to work on Sundays, what all needs to be built in, how policy needs to be modified. But when the policy and the business decision needs to be applied through a social method within the organization in a true collaborative and transparent sense, it really creates a very different environment. It really creates a very different engaging world where the sense of belonging starts coming to this new generation. And when we start looking organizations, those are truly adopting collaboration as their true DNA, adopting social technologies, method of ability to provide mobility across their organization, and really truly using them in their decision making, policy formulation, ideation, expertise building, that really creates a very differentiating environment for attracting and managing new workforce.
Okay.
And I think that's what I feel.
Yeah, you know, from attracting and developing the new generation to retaining it, this is a generation in a hurry.
Yeah.
You know, they don't want to hang around for years with a job or with a company. Shine.com survey says that you know, 50% of millennials want to be with an organization for about 1 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And the next bracket is about 1 to 5 years. They don't want to hang around for longer than that. Now, what can companies do to change that, and should companies work at changing
Yeah.
that?
So, fair point. I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. I'm not sure whether organizations per se should really look for engaging with people beyond a specific period of time, and that can always be debated. The other question can be, no, we invest in human capital, human resource, whatever you call it, and you know, we expect returns back. It has to be a longer term relationship, meaning, etc., etc. My sense is, Payal, I want to go back to a point we raised some time back and then try and answer this. Organizations today have multiple generations within their workforce. So it will be horses for courses kind of a thing. For people who are non-millennials, it's a question of sharing a context and a larger organization, what can I do for you, positioning around it. Typically, such people who would be in their 30s or mid-30s, early 40s would look for meaning in life, money, careers, what's my next level role, and the pyramid for them starts becoming very, very small at that point of time. That's a different conversation we need to have. And surely for millennials, it's also a calculated conversation you need to have. Not all millennials are great. Not all workforces are only horses or only donkeys. And you need all varieties, right? For all you know, I may be just a donkey, who speaks well. So it's important to have a segregated conversation within the millennials themselves. There are certain aspirations that you can't fulfill. Everybody cannot be the CEO. Every idea cannot be incubated. Everything cannot be flexible. Everybody cannot work from home. Imagine Max having doctors working from home. Oh my God, right? So it has to be extremely calibrated to the role, to the aspirations of the organization, and then fitted back to where the individual fits in. Because it's very difficult to have different organizational faces for different set of employees. But you can definitely have different practices for different generational approaches around it. Why these are important is because one will flow into the other. If I'm having one set of consistent conversation with people in the millennial generation,
Right.
and a different but similar set of conversation for people from a different set of generation, people will see, connect, and look for linkages. If they are transparent and candid, they will say, this organization makes sense for me. And I see a larger purpose here. And probably today it's really not so much about years that people look for. What they look for actually is something like meaning at work or meaning in life. So long as that relationship is mutually beneficial in every sense of the word, money is very important, career, role, etc., people would be ready to shake hands with you. And also organizations should be very happy for people not to show up at work at times, except that you should plan for that.
Okay. Suresh, quickly, 70% of millennials see themselves working independently at some point of time in their lives. How can companies adapt themselves to this kind of a workforce?
Ties into your earlier question as well.
Yes, please do. Quickly.
Short answer to your question, Companies needn't really bother about this.
Okay.
Okay, people want to beat their own path. That's fine, because at frontline jobs where most people new to the workforce are coming in, you definitely want good attrition there, because your cost of business really takes a beating if they stay on for too long. So better of the lot will move up the ranks. This is a grenade in the room in that sense, but that's fair and fine. But your earlier question is, I think if we can provide experiences, folks will stay on.
Okay. How important is work-life balance?
Work-life balance is extremely important. After all, what is the employee working for? He's not only working for getting a good salary or a good standing in office. He's also looking to have a good life. So work-life balance is one of the most important things today. And companies that provide a work-life balance and the means to do that are certainly in demand, and they score edge over other companies.
Okay, Anmol, a quick last word on how can companies manage several generations of a workforce in an efficient manner?
Absolutely. So as we are looking how by 2020 we'll have 50% of millennials and rest of it different generations. And as we have seen, clearly the methods of doing motivation, performance management, the meaning around what new generation is doing will be slightly different from what we have seen with the standard or traditional approaches. What organizations have been doing is really identifying programs through which immersion happens between both the generations, and they start working together in terms of their methods of working and the projects and the ideas which needs to be built around them. What we have seen organizations really taking forms by which, if they are geographically distributed, how they can really build technology by which they can create more collaboration around it. How can they bring more data? How can they bring more analytics inside so that they can mix and match the project teams in such a way that there is a balance between generational diversity between the organizations. And the bigger piece across the organization is becoming aware that organization will have generations which needs to have different expectations, and they will be expecting different modes and methods of working. Many organizations have started focusing on really enabling, educating their employees, being aware of each other, and really making sure that they understand that there are ways and means by which they will be having different level of workforce or diverse workforce around them, and also provide support system if there is a need and methods to really create more engagement between both areas.
Okay, so organizations need to adapt themselves to the changing workforce. With that, we'll open this discussion to Q&As. You can please ask your question and name the panelists that you want to ask that question to, please.
Very good evening to all of you. My name is Mehernosh Ditya. I am a fraternity of HRN training. This question I've had in my mind for quite some time now. So I'm going to say this and any of you can answer this. Many times organizations, when they recruit people, they look at their degrees, they look at the paperwork. In my experience, I've come across people who don't have the relevant paperwork, but they are very good human beings with great attitude, but they're not taken. Now, if you are looking for a pearl in an oyster, you're actually giving up that opportunity. Is it really relevant to look at the paperwork, or do we look at the human being and what he can contribute?
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
Sure. So clearly more and more studies we are seeing, and you would have read that more and more organizations have started looking at that our stereotype hiring has been based upon the number of degrees and the grades which individuals have scored in. And more organizations have started realizing that correlation is not really working with the performance or the fitment. And what organizations have started seeing now is when you look at behavioral sciences, when we look at human behavioral sciences, there is a lot of work today which can really help assess the true skill, the true expertise, the true talent, the true motivation for a candidate or for a prospective employee. And many organizations have started taking holistic approach to really look at individuals rather than taking a narrow approach of looking at grades and looking at colleges we are coming from. And more organizations have started looking at how they assess skills, how they really identify inherent talent, and how they really match the cultural fitment of an individual with the organization. Everything could be great, grades could be A, schools could be pretty much high pedigree, but then there is no culture fitment between employee and the organization and things don't work. So the world is no more about best candidate, but world is more and more about most fit candidate in the context and in the world where the company is and where the work is located. And I think that's where it is moving.
Marinosh, can I just add to that? If you look at the process as one of selection and not elimination, then I think all these grades, where they worked, what they did, all that goes out of the window. Okay? And the second one is far tougher, is to have the ability to punt on a person without having data and degrees to back you up, which is where I think most of us as hiring managers fail. We are unwilling to take the punt.
You can just.
May I ask another question?
I'll first, can I make a comment on your first question?
Sure, sir.
Corporates should take a leaf from what the defense forces are doing. When we select people for a job role, if they cross the threshold, then they go to something which is called the SSB, Services Selection Board. And there we make them undergo a battery of tests which brings out their individual qualities under stress. Now, what we test for is for battle conditions. What you can test for is corporate conditions. If that sort of a thing is introduced, it will not cost too much, but it will bring out the best person for the best job.
Thank you, sir. Just to add to what you've said, you know, a lot of people, especially hiring managers, when they start interviewing candidates, they go through the degrees, then they talk about, tell me something about what you were successful in. I've yet to come across people who ask, tell me where you failed and how you bounced back. I don't hear that. Number one. Number two, when we talk of culture, very correct, it starts top down. There is another problem which I have experienced, and I'm calling it a problem because it is a problem. Who is going to talk to the top man who's causing the problem?
Can we have the next one?
Can I?
Okay, you can.
So in the context of the millennials, you needn't bother about the top man. If it doesn't make sense, walk out. But seriously. So, Marinosh, I disagree with you completely, and I'm taking the liberty of being extremely candid. We call ourselves professionals, and the word literally means that I am part of a profession. I cannot just land up into being a doctor. I cannot just become an HR guy or a sales guy or a finance guy. Because there is a set of knowledge and skills which academics mandatorily provides me, which enables me to be that professional. There's a gate criteria, including teachers. You and I can't go to a school and start teaching. We have to have a BA degree. So, very briefly, grades and degrees are very important because they are starting points. If you take them as decision pointers, then of course there is something wrong. And second part is, why do we ask people their success stories? Well, very honestly, regardless of what you ask them, the objective is to have people talk. And we are supposed to listen as hiring managers. The more people talk, the more opportunities you get to understand what their thought processes are. And like General Saab and Anmol mentioned, a large part of cultural fit is about figuring out what are the beliefs and values people exhibit when they talk. Because remember, interviews last typically 20 minutes, right? You go in, make an impact and say, this guy is great, and we'll take a punt later on what happens. So I wouldn't really be so bothered about interviews. Statistically, it's a 50-50 game. Don't waste your time on that. If you like the guy, hire. In my organization, we have a concept called fail fast. You make a mistake, quickly identify, fail, move on. So that's okay. It's a millennial generation.
Well, let me add a little bit in terms of how candidates are being really hired. So a lot of new research is happening these days, and scientific and data-driven methods by which you can choose who you are looking for. And there have been new experiments about probably you don't need to interview candidate, you just need to let them play a game, and a game of 5 minutes or 10 minutes of response can generate gigabyte of data and really give you insights of what is the point of decision when this guy hesitated to take a decision, what is the point when he took a shorter route than taking a complex route, what is the point in the game when he really reacted angrily to a situation when the frustration point came in. So there is enough scientific methods being deployed these days, and there are enough work happening and how to assess scientifically around the data. So if you really look at 70s, there was degree of number of gatekeeping tests, methods were being deployed. Today, if you really look at in between, the extent of really testing an employee came down because probably jobs were high, availability was high, but really matching how we can identify scientific methods, research-based methods to really understand what the true talent, skills and capabilities are and match what are you looking for. And there's a lot of experimentation happening these days. This is a very, very significant problem for organizations to really find the right fit. And there are new methods which all of you can take advantage of.
All right, can we have the next question, please?
Good evening. My question to each one of you would be, how would be your organizations using the social networking, the websites to aid in the HR processes? Say Facebook or Twitter. Mm-hmm. Are your companies using them and how?
So can I take that?
Sorry, could you just repeat
I
that
can
again?
repeat it. So what the question is that how companies are taking advantage of social technologies.
Okay.
To do what?
Yes, so
I'll-
let
In
me
terms
give a
of the
perspective.
HR, in terms of the HR
For
function,
HR.
and in terms of achieving the corporate objectives, are you using these tools to help?
Or corporate objective.
So let me give you a perspective in terms of what is changing, right? So as we were talking about how enterprise is changing from where it was, and today there is so much of technology around us in terms of how social technology is available, how data and availability to put analytics is available, but organizations, those truly can increase the speed to market, and organizations are measured on how fast they can go to market with their services, with their products. And organizations, those are unable to utilize some of the social, mobile and data capabilities to improve the decision making of the organization itself, they will fall behind, because ability to use social data methods, analytics methods, really take technology at the heart of the organization. Those organizations will be able to improve their decision making at every level far faster than the organizations those are not using it. So to give you an example, your question is specific to HR, and if you really look at new enterprise, all new processes will be very engagement oriented. What you see today and what we have seen in last decade or so, most of the processes around all our organization are processes. HR is a process, sales is a process, product development is a process. All of them were very data or record oriented. We used to send something into the data and used to get stored. But in today's or the new world, all these processes will be very engagement oriented, which is if HR process and talent management process is there, right from the recruitment, when you try to hire a candidate, you need to get engaged by social methods. You need to use data to really identify what is the right fit. And when you do performance, it's a similar thing. When you go inside, even learning needs to be social rather than being static, rather than being the old form or old fashion of really doing. So when we look at HR, end-to-end HR of an organization needs to embed social and other technologies so that they can really improve the speed of the organization of talent decision from one end to another. And there are many methods by which that technology is available today. There are social enterprise networks those companies are adopting. There are methods by which you can take inside your HR processes and really build the level of expertise to do that.
So first of all, my apologies. It took me a little time to understand the question, but thank you for asking this. It triggered a completely different train of thought in my mind. And so the fact of matter is that social media is a double-edged weapon. What you and I tweet, like, upload on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever, gets circulated instantaneously. So there is no gap between thought and action. That has got obliterated. So the advantages are all the good things which Anmol shared. I think couple of things that generally organizations are now very, very cognizant about is that how do you restrict, and I'm using this word with a little bit of trepidation, how do you restrict official comments from employees getting to the social media? How do you restrict flow of unwarranted confidential information across? And how do you manage in case a situation happens? So example, Malaysian Airlines has had 2 tragedies, and an employee of Singapore Airlines tweeted something. And instantaneously it was retweeted and whatever by thousands and thousands of people. And guess what? Singapore Airlines ended up making an official apology, right? So it, I think not just HR, thankfully, one of the few situations that it's not just HR which is worried about it, corporate communications, and even the CEO have actually gone ahead and have had a love-hate relationship. The love part is that they proactively engage themselves on social media. So they are available. Companies now have formal Facebook pages for their recruitment practices, for ensuring that you cut your time between hiring and employer referrals to social media. The other is you have also had people relook at your existing policies and articulate how official communication will happen on a social media perspective. Because literally 5 years back, this perspective wasn't there at all. You had one CorpCom guy who was the official spokesperson and he or she spoke. And therefore, it becomes increasingly important today for organizations to communicate internally with their employees and say, in such a situation, how do you react? What do you behave? In case you are, you are an HR head and you are on Twitter, how do you react to a conversation happening generally? Because it's not the individual is reacting, it's the role which gets displayed out. So as our company, for instance, and when I came here for this conference, there's a small mail which goes out which says that, when you are going on a social platform, here are certain quick do's and don'ts you need to be aware of. And while we know you are all this jingbang, please be aware that there is no personal space on a public forum. You cannot say, I was misquoted. You cannot say that this is not what I was trying to say, and so on and so forth. So organizations are extremely cognizant of how social media works. They are more aware of reputational loss and opportunities which are there. HR focuses a lot on recruitment, on branding, on CSR activities getting published, on a lot of activities also happening which are CEOs writing blogs on LinkedIn, for instance. And it becomes something which needs to be very closely monitored. Thank you.
I'll just add to it, which is, so today employees have a printing press and a radio station every day. Expecting that you will be able to control them is not going to work. And in IBM, we had the same challenge, and our social journey is about 10 years. And we have evolved significantly in last 10 years in terms of how IBM becomes a socially eminent organization, how we use social internally, and how we really engage with the external world socially. But our journey was to really create policy and enable all IBM employees to be far more better social citizens than to exclude them into this participation, and a significant level of effort in identifying what policy should be, how we should behave as social citizens, and a significant level of enablement to create digital IBMers. Those will be able to engage responsibly into the social piece. But the benefits are so many that there will be occasional misses which happens, but you just cannot live those occasional misses and not be participatory or prepare your organization to be socially eminent or socially responsible.
All right, we have time for one last question. Is there anybody? Yes, please. That lady's question.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah.
My question is, which are the unique, I want to ask the panelists, which are unique and effective employee engagement initiatives in your respective organizations which have made the difference in terms of making employees subscribe to a value system and ultimate achievement of the corporate goals?
One panelist.
So employee,
I don't take difficult questions, so.
okay, I'll try to answer it. So employee engagement, you have asked a very, very good question. And one of the characteristics of millenniums is how we provide them feedback at a continuous level, almost on daily basis, and provide a support system to them. And really giving a method by which we can provide insights of employee engagement. And employee engagement is taking a broader scene, which is clearly our ability to do surveys on a point basis continues as a technology. But today we see that a lot of social data and a lot of external and internal social data gets created in the organization, which employees gets engaged on. And there are methods by which you create social sentiment, ability to identify where the sentiment is going and what kind of discussion is happening in the organization, and create a transparency for the organization to go back and really build upon it. But this is very critical for all organizations to create it very seriously, to engage in creating employee engagement information by various methods and bring it back into strategy formulation and execution at a senior most leadership level to really take actions on.
All right, the lady there, you had a question?
Thank you. My another question to the journalist.
Please just, you can ask your question to the panelists once we are done from here.
Chivalry is not dead.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, my question is that when we talk about the millennial generation, they try to find meaning in the workplace. In fact, meaning in life, and work being one of the components. So there are situations when they actually feel that there may be causes that they are creating which are having an effect in their environment, or they also feel that what are the causes that are being created in their environment that is affecting them. So how can the management or the organization identify where the employees or the millennial generation feels disconnected or feels disengaged because of situations which create such impact, and what can be done to address them?
So,
I didn't get it.
sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, so,
No, go ahead, please.
I'm so sorry. So couple of things. I think there is a saying that, physician heal thyself. So probably one just needs to calibrate how one would respond to your question. I think first part is that millennial generations need to do a quick reality check themselves. A lot of causes are self-created, like some of us talked about. There is a huge aspirational pressure that we create on ourselves. Why? There is a huge desire that we have to have the latest updates on Facebook every 15 minutes, on LinkedIn and social media and all that. All my latest photographs have to be updated. My DP on my WhatsApp has to be cool, and and it tells me the status of my heart today. at this instant. So probably, the human mind and body is not geared to live life so fast. So that's the second thought that we need to ask ourselves, that whatever generation we are. And third perspective is that we also need to do a very honest reality check, and this is where companies come in, between what I desire and what I deserve. When I started my career, and I'm almost embarrassed to say that I started my career many years back now, my manager would, say, first you deserve, then you desire, and I would hate him for it. But this applies every time, and it applies to each generation. It's like value, it's consistent, right? So many of us end up desiring and having this I, me, and sense of entitlement far more than we genuinely deserve to be there. So if you take care of these three things, then organizations are an enabling environment. There is no mother and father in an organization which will wipe your tears away. Ultimately, an organization will say, my friend, this is where we should stop and part as friends, and you go your journey and let us complete our journey around that. So like one of our colleagues talked about, engagement is a moving goal. What would have been the sense of engagement during General Saab's time in the army would have significantly changed in his role, which is today, which is not to talk about an age, but the roles change. So if as a millennial generation you are only focused with the spotlight being on you, well then it's like candle burning very brightly, but on both sides. It will be short but very bright, and the choice therefore rests with us.
Right. You
Okay,
want that?
he said a lot of things for the corporate. I'll say something for the army. How we do it in the army. Every month end, the equivalent of a CEO gets 700 of his people sitting in front of him. And it's a free for all discussion, which we call it darbar. And everybody is free to stand up and say whatever his problem is, whatever his suggestion is, and answers are given to him. What answers are not given to him will follow. If a person wants to do it anonymously, there are boxes kept where he can put a slip saying this is the problem. He doesn't have to sign it, and action is taken on that. And this works. It is old time, but it works. I don't think there can be a technology insert which can replace this. A human-to-human interface is much better. And a management which is alive to the situation, which is alive to its employees, can see it on the face of the person that there is something wrong with this person. And if they follow it up, if they have the time to follow it up, which in corporations they don't have. That's the difference I find. In army we had the time.
Yeah.
In corporations we don't have the time. But if we follow that up, we will reach the root of the problem and see how it can be managed. But remember, without humans, the corporation is just a building. We have to manage the human beings. And we have to invest much more time and effort in them. And we will come to a solution.
All right, with that note, we'll end this evening. You can ask some of your questions to the panelists when they step down. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. A big round of applause for our panelists and our moderator. I'd like to request the head of customer marketing, Shine.com, Mr. Rajeshwar Mukhopadhyay, to please come up and present gifts to our panelists. Go forward. You go forward. To Payal Bhattar, our moderator. To Suresh Ramasubramanian. To Faisal. To General Dr. Kocher. And to Anmol. Thank you very much. If I could request you all to just stand together for a group photograph. Yeah. In front, please. You can come in front. Just take the center stage. No. Let's go in center. Go into the center. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for them. Thank you very much. If I could request you all to please be seated in front now. Before we close, we'd like to share with you, ladies and gentlemen, a very short film from one of our partners. If we could just roll the film, please.
What if there is an automobile that plays with all elements? An automobile that is able to please all senses. Touching our heart. What if there is an automobile that takes in all these influences, ideas, and visions of design, of efficient, lightweight construction, what if there is an automobile that consequently builds on the strength of the past and takes it to new perfection? An ideal symbiosis of tradition and innovation. An automobile that makes our heart beat faster. That is intuitively operable. That is efficient due to its lightweight. And at the same time, conveys a sense of security. An automobile that points towards the future, that looks at us with keen eyes, by day and by night. And attracts everyone's attention. An automobile that makes our vision of modern mobility come true. More distinct, more intuitive, more sportive. Further ahead. The new Audi A3 sedan.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is something that most of us certainly deserve, and of course, many of us definitely desire. So that was the Audi car that was being presented by one of our partners. We'd like to now thank and acknowledge the support that has been received from all our partners, and we'd like to just name them. Our presenting partner, the Institute of Management Education, Audi Gurgaon, that you saw the presentation on, Mr. Shiv Khera, our keynote speaker, Metal Talent Measurement, our skill assessment partner. Our training partner, Overture Red. Travel partner, Holiday Dreams. Recruitment partner, Career Marshal. Relocation partner, Agarwal Packers and Movers. Our event partners, Popularity, Pens Solutions, Dr. Lal Path Labs, Isotron, Pistachio and Almonds, Mother's Pride, Presidium, Sakri IT Solutions, Worlds of Wonder, and Godrej Properties. Thank you very much for joining us for this event at hdshine.com. We'd like to now request you to please join us for dinner and cocktails outside. Thank you very much. We also have the speakers here available for you in case you want to interact with them and ask them more questions. Thank you very much. Please join us outside now for cocktails and dinner.
What if there is an automobile that plays with all elements?